On August 24th, 2020, my daughter courageously revealed the traumatic truth. She had been subjected to sexual abuse for years by her father. Regrettably, the subsequent investigation conducted by the Department of Children and Families, DCF, and the Child Protective Team, CPT, was inadequately handled. What ensued was a deeply flawed investigation, a miscarriage of justice that left her father unscathed, by the law, facing no charges for his heinous actions. Unperturbed by his reprehensible actions, her father seized the opportunity on August 25th, 2020, when he was on the brink of deportation due to unrelated matters. He hastily orchestrated a marriage to my friend's nanny in a desperate bid for a green card and the chance to establish paternity before his impending expulsion. Concurrently, on that fateful August 25th, 2020, investigations were set into motion by DCF, the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office, PBSO, and the Special Victims Unit, SVU. About 6 days later, her father filed a petition with the court to establish paternity for the first time and a parenting plan. In response, I countered with a resolute answer, leaving no room for ambiguity. We were determined to seek full custody, given the ongoing criminal investigation. Approximately 6 days later, September 1st, 2020, her father filed a petition with the court to establish paternity and a parenting plan. In response, I submitted a counter-answer, unequivocally declaring our intent to seek full custody, given the ongoing criminal investigation. October 2021. However, her father inexplicably vanished from the legal landscape, falling off the docket for 10 months, stubbornly refusing to submit his financial affidavit or engage in the court proceedings. When he eventually resurfaced, we were forced to attend a compulsory mediation. It was at this mediation session in October 2021 where he threatened to change his stance, aiming for 100% custody, time sharing, and full parental rights, all while basically accusing me of parental alienation due to his voluntary absence. I refused to grant custody due to the abuse that my daughter had experienced at his hands. When we were probed, the reason for his unexplained absence, he cited a fabricated cancer diagnosis, claiming it as the reason behind his non-participation. It was abundantly clear, though, that the looming criminal investigation was the actual catalyst for his vanishing act. It was also abundantly clear that her father, unlike myself, although lying to the court and claiming to be unemployed, he, in fact, had ample resources to retain his attorney and be represented the entire 18 months during the lawsuit that he filed, that he stepped away from. Nothing but money and time on his side, he made the decision to alienate himself from the court case and his daughter's life. Fast forward 18 months later, January 2022, confronted with the daunting prospect of a trial without legal representation, only after I could no longer afford to retain my counsel, I reluctantly entered a second mediation session, this time without my original attorney. The second mediation took place the day before our trial, January 10th, 2022. Driven solely by unwavering concern for my daughter's safety, I made the excruciating decision to reluctantly concede to 50% custody, compelled by her father's coercive tactics and menacing threats made at both the first and the second mediation. On January 15th, 2022, marked a pivotal moment where my daughter was reunited with her father after over a year and a half spent recovering from his abuse. However, what was to have marked a watershed moment turned into a horrifying ordeal for my child. My child was thrown into a nightmare that no adult, let alone a 7-year-old child, should have survived all by herself, with no one to help her, other than her alcoholic grandfather and the PBSO police. In desperation, alone, locked in my parents' bathroom, my daughter dialed 911, pleading to the operator for help. Unknowingly, reigniting her SVU case investigation from August 2020. When the police arrived, my father refused to allow them inside to speak with my daughter and grant her the help that she was seeking. Shockingly, despite my child's desperate plea to the police and her disturbing revelations, her father remained inexplicably unapprehended, solely to my father lying to the police and refusing to allow my child contact an interview. These illegal acts by my father were attempts at aiding and abetting my daughter's criminal father. In the 5 days that followed, my daughter summoned her inner strength to disclose her abuse to her teachers at St. Anne's Catholic School and on-campus officer, only for me to face initial outright denial from the school administrator, Angela. Despite the initial denial from the school, subsequent interviews conducted by DCF investigations with both the school teachers, Mrs. McClure and Mrs. Moore, and the on-campus officer from West Palm Beach Police, Katie Smith, vindicated her agonizing truth. In March of 2022. March 15, 2022, during spring break, while alone under her father's care for 10 days, for the very first time, my daughter, her health deteriorated, necessitating 2 emergency room visits and a transfer to St. Mary's Hospital. A vigilant doctor, Jerome Vincente, who received her case, raised serious concerns of sexual abuse, urgently advising his colleague, who was responsible for my daughter's stay, to immediately report to the authorities. On March 23rd, 2022, 1 week later, my daughter was asked to attend a post-overnight hospital stay, 1 week checkup with a pediatrician. Subsequently, during this visit, Dr. Hardy Blount launched a second DCF investigation after my daughter confided in her upon interviewing my daughter alone. We were then referred to the ER at St. Mary's for further evaluation of Dr. Hardy Blount's physical findings of abuse. They were notated after my daughter's examination. After detaining and interrogating my 7-year-old child in the parking lot with pediatric associates until midnight, us in our car and her father in his car, PBSO suddenly vanished from the scene while I was still on the phone with the lead SVU detective assigned to my daughter's case. Back in January, Detective Minroy, the female detective who was responsible for already reopening my daughter's case 2 months prior due to her 911 call. She was who were deployed and present with us for the past 4 hours had just vanished. We were left completely alone with no police escort to the emergency room and no one to guard us from his stalking. Even more shocking, her father's car pulled away with the officers, him right at the wheel, and Betty was loud. Shockingly, these disturbing revelations to law enforcement given by the doctor by forcing my 7-year-old to remain alert and descriptive until midnight while in absolute fear, while conducting 3 interviews with her completely all alone within the previous 5 hours, first with the female doctor, second and third with the female police officer. Her father remained inexplicably unapprehended and free to follow us to the ER. 3 hours later, at 3 a.m. on March 24th, 2022, our arrival finally occurred. After being escorted by a police officer from new jurisdiction, Palm Beach Island Police, my 7-year-old was still being forced to remain awake while being continuously interviewed. Around 3:34 a.m., a new officer barged into her room to accompany the other male officers who had already escorted us. This gentleman introduced himself immediately as Detective Minetti, the lead SVU detective on my daughter's case, and he asked me to step outside immediately in order for him to interrogate my daughter. Confused, frustrated, and drained, I was forced to leave my daughter all alone at 4 o'clock in the morning with multiple adult males at her bedside shouting questions rapidly loud enough to hear through the door that he was constantly interrupting her answers, not allowing her an opportunity to speak quickly enough to answer the questions that were shouted at her. Alone outside of the hospital room, and immediately called the female detective, whom I was on the phone with, 3 hours earlier, in the evening at midnight, when her PPSO officers left us unescorted. I asked why is she no longer the lead detective. She was bewildered, and she stated that she in fact is the lead detective, and that I should remain calm while she tries to better understand why he is present and why he is conducting his investigation at 4 o'clock in the morning with my exhausted and scared 7-year-old. I did as she stood, and I stood outside as she asked, and I stood outside while he interviewed my daughter for nearly an hour. I then exhaustively was interviewed until the early hours of March 24th, 2022. During the interview, my scared child was forced to remain alone until it concluded. On March 24th, 2022, following our overnight interrogation at the ER, my daughter and I were sent home from the hospital to recover from this terrifying and horrific night. On March 24th, 2022, as we were discharged from St. Mary's, I was informed of my responsibility to protect my daughter and advised to file for an injunction on her behalf. I was directed for the second time with a victim service packet in hand to meet the Office of Victim Services at the West Palm Beach Courthouse for legal assistance. However, unbeknownst to me, on the very same day, her father, in an audacious move, filed for his own injunction, leveling false accusations of abuse against him, which were never previously mentioned during our history together. Despite no history of such allegations in our long 13-year history together, he was filed while my daughter laid in her bedside, and he inflicted abuse upon her.